Welcome to Advanced Insights, where we provide just what the show name suggests, advanced insights in some of the most exciting trends and topics in technology. In this episode, I'm joined by Kathy Pham, a computer scientist and a force in responsible product leadership. She is currently faculty and senior fellow for responsible AI at Harvard. Kathy's career is an example of impact across every sector, from her time at Workday, Google, and IBM, to serving as Deputy Chief Technologist at the FTC, serving also as the inaugural Executive Director of the National AI Advisory Committee, and founding Responsible Computing at Mozilla. Kathy, it is great to have you on the show. I've really been looking forward to this because I've been so focused with my colleagues at AMD and working with customers across the globe on this rapid pace of applying AI and figuring out how it can drive productivity. And there's just a myriad of technical issues we've been solving, and we go through the data, we go through all these aspects of models and in making sure we get the right end purpose. In the last 4 months, it's really shifted to a lot of workflow engineering, of end-to-end workflow. But the reason I'm so excited is you see all of that with what you've done, yet you have a whole other dimension that you bring with it, with the work that you do both in academia and as you work with industry, with policy makers across the world. And that is really thinking through, in addition to all of those aspects of the application of AI, how do we do it in such a way that creates trust and that we can do this in a way that is really scalable and that we can take society with us as we advance the technology. So really looking forward to our discussion.
Thank you so much for having me. I've loved seeing clips from this series and so excited and honored to get to be here with you.
Oh, thanks so much. Well, we'll dive in, Kathy, and we'll start with, I will say, a little bit of the practical end, because as I mentioned, the last even just months, there just seems like every day there's a new application. Would love to start on that sort of application side. What are you seeing?
Yeah, on the application side, like you mentioned, there's been this really fast rise in the adoption of so many technologies, both in our personal lives, and then I think within the last year, we're seeing in enterprise and companies the adoption rise as well. But where else, what I find really interesting is the difference between something like using chatbots, pick your favorite, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, etc., to do different kinds of tasks, plan travel, come up with new poems, or even in our development space and maybe with your own developers, code more quickly, find bugs, automate bug fixing, all of that. Then you also have things like, let's say, marketing, where you can do better content copy, understanding your customer base surface and understand groups that you might not have seen before, with the caveat that these tools know what they know, right? There are certain data sets they're trained on that are also missing context or parts of the world that might not exist. Let's say we use something like an OpenClaw or a chat tool to go deep into our work or personal lives. It can do that in a secure way that respects the kind of privacy we want. So, do you want an open source technology to comb all of your devices and your corporate devices? Do you want an enterprise tool that you bought to without fully understanding how much of it is trained on your system or not, to be able to go into like all of your records inside your organization? So that part for me is really fascinating and exciting. It's like the backbone back end of it that enables us to have this like really fun, whimsical experience that we're all experiencing. We're like, oh my gosh, I could stitch together 3 different agents to build a new project for, a new chip in your case, or in my case, a new app front end. But on the back end of that, we want to make sure that those same good old fashioned software engineering and software architecture of how we store our data, how we manage governance on our information, it has just the exact right balance so that we can then move really quickly on the front end without worrying about that back end part.
I think we're all having to, look at our deployments and make sure that we don't run so fast that we open up, vectors where we expose information we didn't want to expose, or create surface areas where bad actors could could breach.
And I mean, that's a great point about you all running OpenClaw in the container, right? And for those of you at home, we're seeing a rise in folks buying the smaller, less expensive devices. I believe like the Mac Mini is having like its resurgence. And so they can run these tools in a more secure, confined space. But then what would that look like then if you could now take that same mentality but apply it to, let's say, your normal uncontained devices, but also with the same security of knowing um, that that it'll be okay, right? And that you don't have to be a security engineer or have like a deep understanding of like complicated architecture to know that you can put something really sensitive, ranging from your proprietary enterprise code to just like your family medical history data, right? Like to know that that's okay. And I mean, you all have been in this space for so long in hardware too. Like it's both a hardware device and a software and a governance, and it's why I can't untangle them. For me, they're all together. You can't separate them. The software, the hardware, the governance, the policy, they're all connected because that's what we need to build systems that what you said so well when you started this was that works for all of the society that we want to live in.
Let's look back at your experience at Workday, for instance. How do people are approaching this as you were helping people as they were implementing workflows and moving rapidly? Is it a conversational interface that they're preferring? Is it an open cloud where it's sort of your messaging back and forth? And what did you see? Do you think that is a way that we can sort of lower barriers of adoption, is giving people more choice of how they interface with AI as they're rethinking their workflow designs?
Yeah. The really fun part, there's actually so many fun parts of being at Workday. One of the fun parts is being around our customers and our users, ranging from those with a lot of frontline workers, like in manufacturing, retail, trucking, to those with desk workers, like services, or like a combination of both, like healthcare. And what we'll see is they're all a bit different. And then, but I see two big buckets that come up. There's the AI you see, and then the AI you don't see. So the AI you see is like folks coming to work. I'm like, hey, at home, I'm able to open any tool now, and there's like some chat thing, and I don't even have to search anymore. There's like the point and click user interface, GUI interface that we've developed over the last few decades in computing is being turned on its head. Right now, what we expect is, say, I have a thought in whatever language, in like speaking language, not coding language, that I'm familiar with. I want to be able to just put that thought in like some imperfect form and then get it back. And so how that surfaces in software products like ours is there's this expectation now where if I have a question about like complicated payroll because I want to move to Dublin, Ireland, where we both have offices, I just want to know. I don't need to click around. And so that's like the AI you see. I want to ask, get back. And then the AI you don't see is the stuff that runs behind the scenes. Like maybe there's an agent that's set up that automatically now does finds anomalies in payrolls because it knows that the end of the month is coming up, and then it automatically will update something and automatically send a notification to a team, and like all this stuff automatically behind the scene. That's like the AI that is like behind your favorite maps on your device, where you're just like, you didn't really think there was AI, but hey, it was like it got me fast somewhere faster because it realized there was a traffic pattern. And those are the two things that I see coming up. The AI you see what people ask for, and the AI that's just like your good old software update, where it now feels better, it's easier to use, and it's powered by some kind of either language model, multimedia model, something on the back end, maybe stitched together agents because multiple services got together. And on the back end, us, Salesforce, Microsoft, we're like, we'll be friends, we'll have policies in place. You you can query something and like that just happens and you're able to connect your systems together. And for me to drive adoption, with the AI you don't see, you basically push it out. And sometimes IT departments will require certain service agreements. They want to know like how you're using AI, things, so you figure that out. And then with the AI, you do see that's often more a lot of corporate training, bringing people along, having communities of people use like use either a chat tool together or coding copilot or something together. That's like your learning development and bringing people along.
You know, I always think there's a bit of a juxtaposition of you need that kind of expertise, but you also need the subject matter experts that may not be expert at yet at applying agentic workflow. How do you see that juxtaposition? Is it the distributed subject matter experts, or is it some combination that makes sense to allow people to get the desired productivity gains?
I love whenever there are big moments of change, I love relying on processes that have worked for decades and centuries even, and then once and, like, also recognizing sometimes we have to introduce new things because we're living in a new world. In the world of, like, do we bring in subject matter expertise or to rely on those with, like, either domain expertise or those who are running our systems behind the scenes? For me, it's always both, right? The best teams are the one where if, let's say, you are in a higher ed organization, I sit in one and I also help CIOs of higher ed institutions often. The IT team, they're responsible for bringing in technology. If they're really great, they'll do user research to understand what the faculty, the students, the staff, parents, like what they need. And they'll bring in the right tools in the right place with the right kinds of access, and they figure all that out. And it's the same thing with when we're bringing in a new technology, like different kinds of AI systems and that they may be making automated decisions sometimes. They might be just completely new interfaces on how we interact with, let's say, in higher ed, like finding classes or searching for like the right cross registration courses. The only way you'll get there is if you have a tight knit like buddy system with the subject matter experts. And those experts could be your faculty, it could be the students, and I'm just using higher ed as an example. It could be your power users, and you can create them as like either an advisory board or in like your team, you just have people who go out and constantly poll and understand and watch what's going on. And I find that now, even and for us in my own organizations, whether it's Harvard or Workday, when our BT business technology teams works closely with our developers, with our marketing teams, to be like, hey, how just like show me what your day-to-day looks like. And then we're like, oh, and I've explored these tools. I'll help you bridge how that workflow you have, let's say in coding, where you go from like ideation to checking out bugs to pull requests to review all of that. I'll like introduce the tool and help you like bridge that. It's always a partnership, and that muscle's existed for us for a long time. So like, I actually remind my teams to let's not forget that muscle when we're trying to move really fast because I'll help you move a lot faster.
Let's actually expand on that muscle and that relationship of partnership that you just talked about, and add that element of governance and responsible AI. And then it's almost a similar question that applies. Like how does that work in that similar fashion you just described? Because there's skepticism. A lot of people will probably say, "Look, Kathy, you're trying to slow me down as you're asking me to think about the governance aspects of this here." And I know you, and I know you feel it should not slow people down. But how do you think about bringing in governance into that implementation process and partnership that you just described?
I've always loved the right governance. I've been this way since I was an early computer science student, and then it's like followed through today where I lead technology and AI in companies. And the reason I say that is because when you're given a guideline, I think of it more as like a guide. When you're given a guideline on what's allowed or not allowed, or what will get you in trouble or not get you in trouble, or even what kinds of design decisions will affect, let's say, the different kinds of groups that need services the most. When you're given those guidelines, it's so helpful to then not have to worry about them and then move really quickly. So a lot of my career has been in places where we've had to ship really quickly, whether it was one of the premier products at Google or inside a government setting where we really had an urgency to solve problems for our veterans in the United States. Like these are like high pressure, high intense, quick spaces that we have to move in. And when you do that, when you have someone there that's like, oh, hey, by the way, Did you know that with the General Data Regulation Protection in the EU, there's this data privacy clause that determines how long you should store data? You're like, awesome, thanks for letting me know that early on. I'll design my infrastructure to take care of that. Put it away, don't have to like worry about the technical debt later. Or like, hey, did you know that in this region, this language is more popular? And you're like, awesome. That was like such an easy thing to introduce in the beginning versus trying to like years down the line trying to retrofit my product. And so I think of governance in both like the capital G of like policy, laws, and governance, where like there's certain things you want to do because you don't want your company to get in trouble, which is like fine, someone take care of it. There's also like the lower G, which is at least in engineering, um, we've had guidelines and norms that we've developed for a long time, whether it's like security, norms for the web. I know we've talked about this, Mark, and you've worked on some of these, like, and like open standards that we all just kind of follow on what we believe like security and privacy are. So when you have that going in and there's a team that helps you understand all those components, it's so amazing because they're just like, great, thanks for telling me what I have in front of me, and now I can go as fast as I can and just not worry about it. And that's why I love governance and having teams that can come together to do that really well. And I'll just add that like at Workday we have a responsible AI officer, Kelly Trindle, and then we have a whole champions network where there's responsible AI champions like designers, product managers, security leaders, just all around the company, so that the moment you have a thought about what you want to build, you don't go and file some ticket. You just like have someone. You're like, hey, Owen, what do you think about this? And that for me is the best kind of governance, if you will. Like it's having folks along the way just to make sure that your product and what you deliver and what you build and what you ship like globally is going to be okay at every step of the way.
You described sort of a distributed team where everyone shares ownership, but you have an expert in the middle, right? Just ensuring consistency. And I didn't think about it in that way. We actually have at AMD a very similar structure, a very, very small, central, both technical teams for AI deployment, but also responsible AI, and then champions all over the company. But I never thought about it in that analogy, and it makes total sense.
Also, fields of studies, and I I actually I really just dislike this, but it exists. Like fields of study have their hierarchies, especially in engineering organizations, right? So like there could be a hierarchy of even down to like hardware engineer versus software, then software versus like social science versus, and these things just inherently exist because they do. And if we can then equalize it and are like that hardware ASIC design engineer or like that software development engineer and that responsible AI researcher over here who studies social science and how humans use technology forever, we're all on equal footing. All of our opinions on how we decide on what the product looks like on the other side, we all have our opinions are equally valued. It goes a long way and it's almost required to make that work well because otherwise it's, well, that's a nice to have. And this is the real stuff, right? And I try to constantly reframe that where no, this all of this is the real stuff. We just have different expertise, so we have to bring it together.
When you think about focusing on the real stuff, as you just mentioned, is how does trust build in there? Like for instance, to me, it's almost a litmus test. Like if there's an aspect of control, of security, or you mentioned the many dimensions that come into to trust. I'm sure that we could probably between you and I list off 10. But without that, if without trust, I mean, you can't really deploy AI. That your company won't accept it, society won't accept it. So how do you think about building trust into systems and workflows that are being designed? It's multifaceted.
I love bringing up trust all the time in every room I'm in, especially with our builders, because to your point, we can't succeed without trust. What I'll also say though is what I've seen in my own just years of research in this space as well. People will use tools they don't trust. And we see that all the time. Companies might not always buy tools they don't trust because they're worried about risk. But as consumers, we use tools we don't necessarily trust all the time because sometimes it's convenient. Sometimes, let's say, it's a social media platform where we have a community, um, and and it makes it so that it's more important than ever for those of us who have the honor of getting to build these technologies to build in trust despite whether or not we will lose users and customers on the other end. So like that's one bucket. There's also, yes, the other bucket too. If you don't prioritize trust and safety and doing the right thing with your technical architecture, you can get fined, you can get in trouble, you can get sued. Like all of those also exist. But those are both true. So even in scenarios where you're like, you know what, the legal framework makes it okay. I don't have to worry about it. It's still just as important for us to continue down that path, or else we end up building things that are much worse for society as a whole. And we've seen that with some recent cases of technology as well. And to get there, and I always go back to how do you bring the folks into the room that can raise the trust questions that no matter how many of the brilliant minds you have in your room, we'll just never get there because maybe that wasn't our area of discipline. Maybe none of us ever like really in-depth studied social science, history, law, economics, like, and how do we bring, and that's like mostly the engineering rooms I'm in, how do we bring those perspectives in either permanently or temporarily um, to be able to make those decisions around what trust looks like across different communities, what trust looks like across different parts of the world. It looks differently. And there are also different laws that will lead to what happens if you violate trust of consumers, right? Like in the US, if your product violates trust and does harm, there are laws and enforcement against that. In some other regions, there might not be. And so, again, it goes back to like having all those perspectives in your room or at least quick access to them so that you can build trust from the beginning.
Well, you mentioned the rules and regulations, and that's a great segue into how to even think about regulatory in this incredibly fast-moving environment.
They're both separate and together. So, like, I think how companies doing what is right that's aligned with their values, and then regulation and compliance that always exist will continue to coexist. And like I'll also add that sometimes what is legal may not always be what is right for society either. Like we've seen that throughout the years on like what is legal, who's viewed as a person, things like that throughout history, right? And so I think there's like a balance of companies having their values to do what's right. And it's also equally important for organizations to come together and help the policy making and governance around the world. And not just policies, but I think of policies as like there's like the legal laws that let's say in the US Congress enacts, but there's also guidance from, like, let's say, an executive order from the White House or guidance from the Department of Justice or Federal Trade Commission. And then there's also standard guidance from things like the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST. And all of these components affect how products get built. They just have different levels of consequences if you don't follow them. And I actually ran alongside Miriam Vogel and James Manika, the National AI Advisory Committee for some time, and I think Keith Schreier, who's now at AMD, was on that as well. And we came together as a group of government folks, industry leaders, and advocates, like policymakers, social scientists, etc., to think through and make suggestions on what laws should be enacted, how governments should use technology, how to communicate upskilling to citizens, like all these pieces. Um, and it's not just one thing. It's always the whole ecosystem. There's like the let's help companies understand what they should do, and also let's have the laws and regulation in place so that they can exist because like everyone can have like a north star for what they should be moving towards.
Well, I have to believe it's like cybersecurity. Like you can't, if you have a cybersecurity breach, it's reputational, right? So you every day, you want to make sure you're on top of any of the new risks. And would that analogy apply to regulatory? It's like, hey, this is not optional because it could be reputational if you're not paying attention.
No one goes around saying, "We have secure software." You're like, "Of course you do." Like there's no like you should launch unsecure software. Like that's not a thing you do. It's the same I think with trust and AI. And so like there should be no such thing as like irresponsible, untrustworthy AI. The default like all AI is and should be responsible AI. There should be no alternative. And like the movement around security of building not just the standards. Like we have standards in abundance, and this was a big part of that. Not, and then you had like regulation around if you have security breaches that cost money, like there are repercussions. But there also was a cultural component of the shift left movement, right? Where it's like, sure, you can have a tiny security team at the end that's like, checkbox you're secure, or every single software developer or hardware from the beginning, shift left for those who are unaware is like you basically shift security all the way to the beginning. And it's like top of mind for everyone. And I think that's what's informed how I think about this moment as well. Like we have this muscle with security, and we like, for the most part, most people agree we should have secure software. And so let's do the same thing with this moment for AI and actually with everything, with trust, with responsibility. Let's shift left, build it from the beginning. We know how to do that, and then we'll go from there.
Well, look, I want to talk about the human element for a moment. I mean, it is a period of such change as new technologies are coming out every day. It's really it is AI, but it's much more than beyond that. There's just the whole pace of technology innovation is increasing, and I feel like there's a challenge that those of us that are in the technology industry have, and that is how do we take the population with us so we don't go so fast on technology that it's not tracking, and frankly it could create a backlash if we don't do this in the right way. What are some of the elements that need to be addressed here?
A question I'll often ask my own self and then my teams is what it would look like or how amazing it would be if all of us, when we move really, really fast on technology, also have a pulse on the needs of every single person in the world. And if you only build for your power users, people who want to do it first, you're leaving other folks behind. So I think there's a component of moving fast, but if we build a culture where like I'm going to move fast, but in the back of my entire team's mind, we understand all the people who are going to use our products. So maybe it's a chat tool. You think about all the people who use it, including unexpected users like kids, teenagers, including people who never use it but may be affected by it because of the information that is surfaced up in the tools and technology, right? So I think about like multiple tiers of that when we think about the human component where who's affected, can we try to think about all the people who are affected, all the stakeholders, multi-stakeholders, even if they are not direct users, and how do we surface those insights into the products that we build? So that's like one bucket of as we build the technology. And then like in the world of how do we bring people along? What is the future of the workforce? What kinds of skills do people have? Things are changing. Anyone who is like glossing over it, like it's all gonna be fine. Like I mean, some people are, some people aren't. Some people are more in the dooms, like it's everything's going to burn. Like leaning into helping understand what the tools that we have can do, ranging from like complicated agentic systems to just like simple chatbots. What kinds of skills will be replaced within which kinds of jobs? So in some cases, it just might be half of someone's job is taken over by some of these tools, so they can do the other parts of their jobs well, which is awesome. In some cases, some organizations might choose to decide that certain roles are no like certain entire roles are no longer needed, but their company will still need people. And so where can you reassign someone? I'll sit with nurses and doctors and healthcare systems where they're like, we have a lack of personnel in the healthcare system, but we also have burnt out nurses and we don't want them to leave. Can we use your school tools to like think through what kind of skills exist in the entire healthcare system, for example? Large language models are really good at this. And then how do we parse and shift those skills to think through, all right, what kinds of skills does this person have? Let's say an incredible nurse. And what kinds of other skills are needed? Maybe something in scheduling or patient advocacy. And like, how do we bridge those together so we can move people around in appropriate places and invest just as much time and things like that? And then teach people what these how they can use some of these technologies in their day to day again, like whether they're a nurse understanding diagnostics or a developer building help bring the teams along and train them up and show them how to use it, because like the hey, just use these tools because you have to. I mean, how are people going to do that? It's they need the communities around them. My colleague Athena Karp, who founded a company, Hired Score, came up with like really has talked about the term the chief work officer to really understand what are all the components of work in your organization, not just roles, but like work. And then let's figure out which parts of that is technology slash AI and which parts of that we really need people for. And then like let's meaningfully bring people together and rethink our workforce that way.
Kathy, it is clearly such a period of immense change. When you look at the impact AI is going to have on the workplace, on society as a whole, what makes you optimistic looking forward?
Just like how we had the era of the internet, where the internet brought information to a lot more people to just discover things they've never discovered before. Of course, there's like the flip side of it as well, but it also made it so that people can understand and learn in ways where access was closed off. So we see that with AI. Now you can learn something new, you can learn a skill set, you can walk into a room never having gone to college and be able to craft a memo, get a legal document because someone is because you needed a legal document for your community. Do all these things that were historically a barrier to entry. But the other exciting part too is when we because the whole skills economy and work is completely being redefined. We have jobs like mine with the early software engineers who or you knew that if you graduate with a job or with this degree, you would automatically have a job, and that's change. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't study CS. It just means that the roles that we might get in might be different. But what that also does is it makes it so that how do we think about skills across all jobs? So if think about my own family, my dad was a truck driver. My mom worked in nail salons and which is very common for Vietnamese communities, nail salons and restaurants. And I was in a room years ago where someone was like, well, let's talk about low skill and high skill work. I was like, hold on. What do you mean low skill work? And they're like, blue collar. I'm like, no, can you drive a truck? Can you do operations that's required to unload mountains of cartons from your and like manage like a cross country drive? And how we think about what is high and low and critical skills, especially as a lot of these skills are needed in many of our organizations. Like, what if a truck driver can also now transfer over to do operations in a company because they're kind of done because their back gave out in truck driving? What if a nail salon worker whose mental math is the best I've ever seen because they're constantly doing like calculations, or like a grocery store worker constantly doing calculations on the fly and memorizing thousands of codes sometimes? What are other jobs that exist for them where they can move with like the dignity of work in really interesting way? Because we've had like this class system of what skills are valuable and what aren't. And I see a lot of opportunities both in the reskilling of the workforce today and the changing of like where work is going and what AI can do just to surface like how you can move skills in different places. It's a big opportunity to bring people into the workforce in ways that we're like, oh, well, like your job is over here and what we consider quote blue collar. I don't prefer the term blue collar, white collar, just mainly because of the stigma that it's developed over the years. And those are the jobs our societies require the most, right? And they're also the ones that are incredibly high skilled and skills that when I go to work, people are like, I want someone with operation skills, someone that can communicate, someone that's resilient, someone who can work with customers really well. These are all things with folks I grew up around who are very different than the industry I am in now in the services space. So there's a lot of exciting opportunity there to bring a lot of dignity and care to work for large populations of people.
I've known Kathy for several years and I really enjoyed chatting with her on this episode. A few takeaways really stood out. AI is moving from individual productivity gains to connected end-to-end workflows that can really reshape how organizations operate. Scaling that opportunity depends on trust. AI has to do what it promises. It's got to protect the sensitive data. It's got to be built with governance and accountability from the start. We also talked about the human side of AI adoption, the need to bring people along, to really normalize responsible use, and to avoid creating divides between those who are AI native and those who are not. And we discussed why open collaboration and community are so important to building technology that's stronger, more accessible, more trusted. What I appreciated most was Kathy's optimism. If we apply AI thoughtfully, it can really help us rethink our work processes, elevate the kind of skills we all have, and build a more productive and responsible and human-centered future. Thank you for joining us today. I look forward to bringing you more in-depth conversations on cutting-edge technology, industry insights, and visionary perspectives from some of the brightest minds in the field. You can watch this video show on AMD's YouTube channel, or you can listen on audio-only platforms including Spotify, Amazon Music, and YouTube Music. Technology is always advancing, and I can't wait to share more insights with you next time.